This is Justin Scoop on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. Taking a look at SPX. So let's start in the daily here. And we've got six bear candles in a row. I don't remember the last time that happened. We did get a gap down, and we have a little bit of a lower histogram on the squeeze. So just talked about that yesterday. It's like, wow, we still haven't even had that, even going sideways. So interesting thing with this gap down, it really traded most of the day inside of the range of this candle, except for like a few minutes where it actually got back up into the low of this candle, meaning this is no longer an island. But we still do have this gap down here. Uh, let's get in close. And I'm going to do this. Okay, so this one is no longer an open gap. See where it was open above the green candle, and now we moved up through that in the upper wick today. Okay, well, we still have a very teensy tiny space. I can't even highlight it. We have a very small space here between the high of the candle going back to October 9th and the low of today. Very small space. I can't even get it to show that. Let me see if I can make this a little bit different. Can I get in there now? Still, okay. Well, you can see where I have the bottom edge here is above back there, the high on October 9th, and it is below today's low, but the top edge of this rectangle is not. Anyway, that's kind of all I really wanted to show on the daily. We could keep pulling back some more. We could definitely tag the midline here. I just glanced at futures. It's earlier, it's not close to midnight when I'm usually doing these. So I don't know, over the next 5, 6 hours till I'm normally doing a video, if how much we'll move around. But right now we're down a little bit, but there's a chance that we'll have a gap. And if we have a gap and it holds below this high, then it'll definitely hold below this low. And we could pull back some more. And then the bigger thing would be an island, potentially. So I'm saying this could be an island, but we no longer have this as an island. So it's not going to be an island inside of an island. We can hope for that another time in the future. But what I've just drawn, if you picture this as like an island inside of an island, that's kind of the Rishat structure in Africa, the Eye of Africa, or the Eye of the Sahara. So go look that up because it's kind of cool. Look up Eye of Sahara, and it's a some folks believe it's the lost city of Atlantis. So anyway, uh, let's get back into the 3 minute. So here you can see we traded up. I guess it was more than a few minutes. I was watching this high. It's like, oh look, it held. And then like a little bit later, it traded right up into this, and then I guess pushed up and made another high, and then sold off from there. So it's like it needed to tag. I guess it almost tagged yesterday's low. Gosh, that's really close. So the low here was 68.20 and 62 cents, and the high here was 68.20 and 21 cents. So 68 cents to 21 cents. So that's 47 cents. So we have a gap, technically still a gap of 47 cents from yesterday. So it didn't quite close the gap on the day, and it obviously did not get back up to the close of yesterday. That would have been closing the gap technically. So there's a couple different ways to interpret closing the gap. Closing the gap, I always think of as getting back up to the place that it actually gapped down from the close, but some folks think of it as back up into the body of the daily candle, which would have been here. Close, but still not quite there. And then we closed the island situation, which was getting back above the low here. So a couple different ways to look at the terminology and what we mean. So after we moved back up and closed the island, we closed the island. No longer an island. This is a big S curve. So the gap down, and then we just did a bit of a S curve here, and then we kind of had, oops, missed that. Kind of had a downtrend channel here, kind of riding below the 21 mostly. Tagged it a few times. Great places to short all during this time for a couple of hours. And then we kind of flagged here did like a double top, but then that didn't go lower. Um, so we did move pretty sideways for kind of the last 2 hours of the day through here. Didn't quite get back into the 100, which we kind of like to visit that. So if we do continue down overnight and have a gap down, at some point, I think we'll have a move back up into the 100, but the 100 is going to like sink. It's going to roll back down pretty hard, kind of like this. Like this started with trying to get back down to the gap price way down here, um, and it just takes time for the 100 to actually make it through that. So let me do this differently. In order to get to that price, it took till really the close of the day to be right back at that level. So the 100, it's needing 100 candles basically. Basically, it needs 100 candles that are at a lower range as the higher range candles are dropping off, and it's moving that moving average lower. So mathematically, that's what we're looking for in the candles. Anyway, I feel like I'm talking a lot of technical stuff tonight. So let's get back into how things were moving around. So we had, even though these were some pretty big bear candles, it didn't really move that much on this put. This is the 67.75 put. You can see you got a little bit of a pullback over here on the 67.75 call. And you can definitely see kind of the S curve shape. We were going pretty steep here, and then that shallowed out, then rolled down. We're going pretty steep here, kind of shallowed out, and then reversed. So similar patterns. What I did like about this option is we came into the $3 price numerous times, even late in the day. And you could have set it up to double the option. Most of the time of the day, it would have worked, except maybe here, not here, and then maybe here. I'd have to actually check the price. But every other time, it doubled, it doubled, it doubled, and then it came all the way down to zero point 0.7. So that would have been a nice setup for if it had touched the 100, that would have been better. But when let's see, when we're looking for kind of where these patterns, actually, this looks like it's a what's it called? Expanding triangle or an expanding wedge. That's kind of what that looks like. Um, I'm not really seeing the same thing. Like I kind of see that, but I feel like it's easier to draw this one like this, and that's just connecting like 2 points. So I like that edge there. But this one on the option, it's closer. I feel like it's closer to those highs. I feel like that's closer. I feel like this is expanding. So in this case, you're looking for it to make a lower high, then take out the low, then make a lower high still, but a little bit higher than the move up was. So this is a smaller move up, then a bigger move up, and then a biggest move up, and it kind of followed. It kind of did that on the option. Um, and so even though we're going really sideways at the end of the day, there was definitely opportunities to buy this pretty inexpensively. You may need to actually look at a different option a little further out of the money to do that, but 6,800 was a little too far away. Probably getting back into this range, maybe the 68, I'm sorry, the 67.85 or the 67.80. Those have been good ones. A little less expensive would have brought the price down a little bit further, maybe like $3, but then it's still risking $300. Or if you got to stop, I don't like. So at 2 o'clock, you can still do a stop of 100. I don't like doing that a little bit later. I've just been burned by having to stop so many times that I try and do absolute zero later in the day. The other thing you can do is switch over to SPY because those are usually much less expensive. You're not going to have as big of a move. It's not going to An option on SPY is not going to let you get in at a zero point 0.7 and then go screaming up to 10. It's just not going to have that movement. So that's one reason I like trading SPX. So yeah, I do like the puts where we're having some basing going on in here. And then when we take that out, that should be when the call is moving much more significantly. So if we're going to retest that, and in this case we didn't retest and roll over, it was so close to the end of the day, it really chopped through here. But this is something to look for. It's like if we take out a certain level, what's happening on the other option, the other direction? Are we having an explosive move at that time? Sort of. We had that sort of move. The way that I have it charted is actually not doing that justice because there was quite a bit more movement, quite a bit more range there. So if I go and expand it out like that, that's better. So when we took out the low over here at 3 and continued lower, if you had been buying what candle? Let's see. I guess it held through here. It would have been hard to short on that candle and buying the call. But that would have been kind of right in here. So you'd probably have to buy at like 5 on this option. But that had a really nice move up to 10, 5 up to 10. That would have been in here, getting into a call. So getting in on that pullback. Yeah, I'm not seeing the same significance there. I'm seeing a lot of small candles, a pullback, but I'm not seeing the support on the SPX itself. I'm really only seeing a play going the opposite direction of the put. So it's not just my eyes aren't catching anything that really stands out. I'm seeing more of just the sideways move and this being the middle of a sideways channel. So maybe there's a midline that could have been traded through here. We are right at the opening range. That is one nice thing with this. So if I zoom in on this, these two candles kind of govern the range later in the day here. So let me just draw in, you know what? I'll just draw it this way, but I don't like drawing it with this. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to draw it straight across, catching some highs. Okay. This is so much easier in trading view. And then I'm going to do the 50, and then I'm going to do the left extension on just to show what that hits. Okay, so we're inside of the high of the open candle and the low of the second opening candle. And then the midline, so actually this pulled back and then closed right above the midline and then rallied back up. So that's kind of the setup. But again, what would have told you to do that today? I think it's just choppy. I'm not seeing anything on a 3 minute here. Maybe if we go down to a 1 minute, is something else going to kind of illustrate that's a good setup or that's what to look for in a 1 minute. So let me get this back zoomed in. We'll see if anything stands out. I'm seeing this low here, not quite touching that. If I move this back up, then I'm going to miss the other two highs, but then that hits pretty nicely. Okay, here's a key thing. Let me just get back onto this. So I do really like this consolidation here. And then, so this is 1 minute chart. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candles going sideways. So it's kind of a stair step, but it's also doing kind of this compressing. And so whichever way that's going to break, it should continue. So it actually broke out nicely, retested, came right back into kind of the apex, the point of that, and then bounced nicely. So I really like that setup, but that doesn't have anything to do with this midline or the high or the low. That's just candles. And you're pretty much ignoring everything else. It could also have done the other thing. It could have done this and then broken down, could have put in a new low. Could have bounced right off of this one, retested, come back into that apex point, and then break down again. It just didn't. So it's like you kind of got to wait. So if you had waited for it to break out and then the pullback and getting in here, that would have been an amazing entry. So let's see what time that was. That was at 2:31 Central Time, 2:31 p.m. Central Time, and we want to call. So let's go look at 2:31. Okay, I got to go to the 1 minute on this one. 1 minute. And we're going to try and get tighter in here. Let's just do this. And we're going to look for the 231. Oops, I missed the low. Okay, so 231 would have been right here. On this option, that would have been buying the low. would have been having an entry set up to buy right about $5. You can see the compression here, this consolidation. Didn't draw that right. This one is a little steeper and then a little flatter here just to get some of those lows. So if you're looking to buy here, maybe around five, maybe yeah, 5, 510, something like that. But then you want to get your stop down below that probably would be a safe setup. So probably 5 by 4. I think that would have worked. And then this would have ran up to 10 pretty quickly. Um, you don't want to at this late in the day, you don't want to be playing around with your target. You want to just leave your target and make sure your target is in a range that you've hit recently enough. So that probably would have been selling at 9 or even 8. Just so that you know, okay, it should fill, especially if we're doing something where we're making some lower highs, something like that. So that would have been buying at 5, stop at 4, and a target of 8. That would have been, a 3x set or a 3R setup if you're risking $100. It's possible. You'd need to really be honed in, looking at the 1 minute to let that play out. If we looked at another option, so I did mention like the 67.80. So let's see how this one was trading. So this came down to around $3. No, a little lower than that. Came down to 270. So buying at 3 would have been a nice setup. Buying at 3 and a stop down at 2, that would have been comfortable. And then a target probably at 5. Um, so that's a 2R setup. So that could work. If you're gonna go for the absolute zero, let's see what this one turned out to be. What's the low through here? The low is 135. So we're not quite there. We'd have to go out to the 67.90 call. And we'll zoom back in on this. And yeah, you're buying at $1. But how high did it actually go? So you could buy that 231 price for $1. You're filled up here. If you're watching it, maybe you can fill it 0.75. Um, and you're basically only going to get a double on that option to like 1.5. I think it's a stretch to look for 2. It would have filled. Yeah, the high here was 210, so that would have worked. To buy at 0.75 and sell at 2, it would have worked. But it's always nerve-wracking. Um, you got a little bit of room if you're able to fill at 0.75, but I think the easier one is just buy at 1, sell at 2, and kind of expect that you're making some lower highs and you may not actually hit the 2. So be okay to exit back out at break even at 1. Because once this starts to roll back down, the the option is just going to go to 0. This one went really straight to 0, just because there's no bullishness coming in and you're out of the money by quite a bit, by a couple strikes. So that's always the challenge with these is how do you actually time that up towards the end of the day? I think it's 80% of options expire worthless. So make sure you know where you're at when you're trading at the money or out of the money or in the money, what you're actually trying to do there. So there's a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the option pricing and kind of looking for some things on a smaller time frame. So I hope this was helpful because this is kind of things I'm trying to do. I'm usually doing as the market's open and moving around and just trying to get a really low price and good fill and kind of anticipating, hey, how's this going to move and looking at levels. And so it's a lot more to do that live. If you can have some things drawn in and you've got a set thing that you're looking for. What I found though is that usually the price of the option is usually able to fill at a lower option price, even if the stock doesn't move as much because you've got so much time decay, especially on something later in the afternoon. And this one just really consolidated. We didn't get a strong move, bullish or bearish today. So we'll see how tomorrow goes. If we're going to put in another bear candle, you think we have some bullishness, even if we gap down and then get bought back up. We did have a lot of buying early on. The bulls gave it all back. So all of this bullishness, and then we just came all the way back down and basically closed pretty much at the low. Like we were about to take out, actually maybe we did take out the low. So this low was 67, 66, 71. And then the low here 67, 66, and 75, or no, 76 cents. So this candle was 5 cents above the low from earlier. That's another great place to just buy, just to have, you can do that with a stock too. If you just look to buy pretty much at the low, give it 10 cents and, a stop a little bit further down. Most of the time you're going to get stopped out quickly, but the rare instance that it holds the low, and this is a hard thing to backtrack because you got to look at intraday, you got to have your low marked out. It and it's easier at some point to just kind of set an alert. So if you have an alert set at the low here and you're just waiting, actually if you have an alert set a little bit above the low, when it hits the low, where you set up the trade to get you in, but it's just you got to be watching it. You got to see how things are moving. Trading that exact value may not work as well. Um, But yeah, that's kind of how things moved today. And so, yeah, that's what I got. Hope this helps. This is Justin. Thanks.